foolish mortals.
Hello there. Are you insane? Get out of here!
Remain seated with your seatbelt fastened.
Right, off you go.
Welcome to Average Joe Orlando. Hello, theme park goers. Welcome to another Halloween episode of Average Joe Orlando. Today we are going to be doing another one of our not-so-average lists, focusing on my favorite Halloween Horror Nights houses of all time. I am excited to be bringing you this one. I got to do a little look down memory lane while researching for this one. My first Halloween Horror Nights was back at Halloween Horror Nights 21, which would line up at the time, year-wise, with 2011. So it started in 1990. Everything kind of lined up, so you knew if you were going to 2012, that was 22. Unfortunately, with 2020 being canceled and the 30th supposed to be on 2020, it's now pushed back a year, so it doesn't line up as evenly. So now you have 2024, Halloween Horror Nights 33. So thanks, COVID. Messed that up too. But I'm going to go through the list. I put together a list of 21 of the best haunted houses that I liked. And I want to talk about what makes a good haunted house, what makes them different, what makes them so memorable, and things that we missed. Each year, there's always new houses at Halloween Horror Nights, which is great. However, there are some real misses, and you go through numerous times, and you kind of realize that kind of just wasn't good for whatever reason. So I want to talk about what makes a good house, what makes a house memorable. I'm lucky enough to live here in Orlando and go to the event multiple times. So the fun part is sometimes a house isn't great on your first run and is great on your next run. And going there multiple times, you get to really experience and see what the scare actors can bring, see what new things might be added, some scares that you might miss. Since you do walk through the haunted houses in a conga line type style, sometimes the scares get ruined for you or you completely miss them. So it's really fun getting to do them more than once and then noticing those details or catching that catching that other scare. There we go. We got it. Catching that other scare that you might have missed on the other one, and then also seeing a different detail that you might have missed as well. But I'm going to start with Halloween Horror Nights 21. I remember one house very well, and I only got to go one time, and this one really stuck out, is HR Blood and Guts presents Holidays of Horror. And I remember this one because they had a great pre-show. It was located by Beetlejuice back in the day. That's how old this one was. And they went through the different holidays, and they even had Arbor Day, I remember, with the giant tree that attacked you. And it was fun, and they had a lot of different themes with the H&R Blood and Guts. So it was really fun. They did a holiday house when I went to Halloween Horror Nights 2019 in Hollywood, and it was fun to kind of relive that. I still think the one in Orlando was better, and that's why it made the list today. My next one on the list actually appeared in 2 different years of Horror Nights, which is very strange because I can't really remember many houses that have repeated the exact same house. And this will be American Werewolf in London, which appeared in Halloween Horror Nights 22 and 25 in Orlando. And this one was a great one. They had a giant puppet throughout the house, and then there was even an attack scene in the beginning. You walk through the movie theater. It had just giant sets. It was a very cool house. Anything that uses puppets is always fun just because it's something different. You always think of the actor that has to stand there all night and just scare people with a puppet. I remember the Ghostbusters house having them too. But this was a really neat house and very memorable, going through the different London scenes, watching everybody get attacked. That was a fun one. The next one I'd say, also from Halloween Horror Nights 22, The Cabin in the Woods. This one, I've never watched the movie prior, so I was confused, and later I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But I still remember there was one scene where you walk in and there's all elevators, and there's a character on the floor, and he must press the trigger because all of a sudden, like, different elevator doors open, so you never knew what was going to attack you. You went through a giant cabin, which was in the woods, spoiler alert, and that was a really just neat kind of house that really went back in the day. These, for me, earlier years are a little blurry just because I don't know, maybe I was enjoying the event a little bit more, or it was just so many years ago, but hard to remember. So as they go on, I definitely have a better idea of some of the houses. My next one, the original Halloween house for Halloween Horror Nights 24. They did do this one again, but I remember 24 being the better of the two. It was the original movie Halloween, and this had a whole facade where it actually had a projection on the outside, and This is going to sound super gory, but Michael Myers attacking in the opening scene, like in the movie. You watched it in the house. You walked through each scene from the movie. So if you watched the movie, you knew scene by scene of what was happening. There was the car scene with the strangling. There was every little detail in there. Really, you went through the entire thing. The only other one I remember that was like that would have been the so-called Scream House. That became the Purge House. So for those of you who don't know, one year they we're going to do a Scream House. The rumor was out there, and then all of a sudden they announced they're doing a Purge House, and you walk through it, and you could see the Jiffy Pop on the table. You could see all the garage scene, the bathroom scene. You knew it was supposed to be set up scene by scene, and that probably would have made this list if they were able to get the rights to finish that house. But the original Halloween house for Halloween Horror Nights 24, that was a great repeat house. It had the trick-or-treaters that would come out, and I just remember them going, trick-or-treat, and jumping out and scaring you every time. Plus, Michael Myers is always super tall and attacking you from any which way, but he's always so slow, so it always just drives me nuts in the movie. He just walks, still catches you. What are you going to do? The next one, Ghost Town, The Curse of Lightning Gulch from Halloween Horror Nights 26. This was a fantastic house with giant sets. I remember being in the sound stages, and they had a giant, old western town, and everybody was supposed to be dead was the storyline of this ghost town, hence that. And the Lightning Gulch was the town that you're going through. And props from Lightning Gulch have actually appeared in other houses or signs from it as part of the lore of Halloween Horror Nights. The creatives behind Halloween Horror Nights really like to pay homage to the old ones and then also keep a lot of storylines going or intertwining, which makes this one really fun too, that this one had the whole Lightning Gulch storyline and had, I think, one of the most quotable ones that year of, "That's my gold." And that's what I remember at the end. The prospector guy at the end would always just say that on your way out of the house. The makeup was really cool for this one. They all looked like it wasn't masks. I love any house that doesn't do masks, and I love any house that does large sets. So when you walk through an entire scene and it looks like it's raining or props are going off and you feel like you're in a movie set, to me, that is the perfect house to walk through, because you are not walking through a little hallway. You are walking through a giant set. Next one I'm going to say is Krampus from Halloween Horror Nights 26 as well. Krampus was over, I remember, in the Shrek building. Wow, how do I remember this? Over in the Shrek building, which is now the Minion moving walkway ride. And it was the holiday house, and it was very fun because it smelled like the holidays. They had a whole gingerbread scene in the kitchen, but it was just a fun house. And a lot of times every year they would do a different fun house. For a while they were doing a 3D house. It always seemed that every year there was a tunnel you walk through and it would spin. So for this year, it was fun that the fun house wasn't a gimmicky kind of house. It wasn't a house that had just like props that would be a little more 3D or a tunnel or just like kitschy. This house was the movie Krampus, which is creepy and weird and kind of deranged. And the house was just fantastic going through, and it was very holiday-esque. So it was very kind of Nightmare Before Christmas, but very dark, making that a fun and scary house. Next one on my list will be from Halloween Horror Nights 27, Scarecrow the Reaping. So there is lore, or I guess I say a myth, over for Halloween Horror Nights that any year that they plant corn, a giant hurricane hits. And if you don't know, hurricane season in Orlando seems to always hit hard around Halloween time. And unfortunately, it takes them months to put up everything for Halloween Horror Nights, and everything has to come down. They have to put things back up. Unfortunately, they have to sometimes cut things because they don't have enough time to put things back up. And I remember this year they did a whole thing of corn out front, and it's supposed to be going through the cornfield before you got into the Scarecrow house, which was located in the tents in the back. And that year they planted the corn, and the hurricane came, and unfortunately those tents flood a lot. However, the house did survive, luckily, and it was a fantastic house. I remember there was you walk through, I guess it was like a barn or a farmhouse, and the whole top of the building collapsed down to the lower half, and it was just amazing set pieces. Really good one. Rumor is this one is going to be coming over to the Vegas location, the year-round one, which would be a fantastic addition because Scarecrow the Reaping was a great house from 27. Also from 27, The Shining, based on the movie/book, The Shining. This one was awesome. You went through all different sets from the movie. So if you are a big fan of the movie like I am, you will recognize everything. But my favorite part is that they did something unique in here. And I think this is another character, not only having great sets and great casts that look like the characters, but also having something unique. And this one had the gold bar scene, and you would come in and it would say care for a drink or whatever he would say, welcoming you. They're dancing, but then all of a sudden the lights would go and everything was dark and everybody turned into skeletons and were dead. So it was one of those cool transition scenes that you're supposed to be in Johnny's mind at the gold bar, but all of a sudden all the good kind of turns to bad and you understand what it was crazy. They also had a lot of cool prosthetics to make them look like Johnny and coming around the corner. I remember they had one actor that would come around with the axe and then it kind of turns and then another one would come out. So there was always somebody that you would see. You would end and start in the maze, and they had the actual maze where it was snowing. Very, very good house. Now, my next few are actually from Halloween Horror Nights 28, and it was so hard looking at the list because Halloween Horror Nights 28 has to be my favorite year by far that I have been to. 28 had a lot of good houses, a good theme. It was the 80s theme they did. The houses were all excellent. So my next few are from Halloween Horror Nights 28. The first one I'll talk about from 28 will be Carnival Graveyard Rust in Pieces. This one was also a soundstage house and had these giant sets, and it looked like you were going through an old graveyard or graveyard for carnival props. However, all the carnies were in there and kind of attacking you. They had one scene where it was like a clown up on a ledge and he would fall forward and look like he was about to fall on you and bounce back. And I've never seen this effect used before, and it was fantastic. I remember going with my brother and him looking up and being terrified because he had no idea this character was going to fall down and then bounce back up. It was a very unique scare. So that's another one. Large sets, great cast, fun, but also unique scares. So as I said, with The Shining having that one, large sets like in Ghost Town, and then also unique scares like in Carnival Graveyard. This next one aged like milk on a summer day. Dead Exposure, Patient Zero from Halloween Horror Nights 28. Storyline, there's a global pandemic. Picture at 2 years later. And you are set in Paris, and you are getting the vaccine. So that could be scary enough for some people, I guess. But this vaccine and this one is supposed to make you blind for a little bit. So this one is supposed to be a very dark house. And you start off and everything's going on. You're in Paris. I remember you're in a train car. But all of a sudden it just gets completely dark. And that's supposed to be the whole you're blind thing. And it was terrifying because this was the darkest house I've ever been through. Especially if you went through during the daytime because your eyes weren't completely adjusted yet to the nighttime. So I remember going through my first time, and it was during the day. We went one of the first houses, and you could not see anything to the point where you were reaching out in front of you hoping not to trip. When you went through at night, your eyes were a little better adjusted and you could see a little bit better. But terrifying house, going through the different set pieces, using a lot of black lights, using a lot of different strobes. You went through an actual train car. It was very, very unique. I've never been through a house that actually used the dark effect like that before. And probably won't do it again just because probably for safety issues of it being so dark. Not to mention, I don't know if they'll do that complete theme again, even though they are doing a Dead Exposure sequel house apparently this year at Halloween Horror Nights. Next one, also from 28, Seeds of Extinction. This was a fun house, and best way to describe it, a wet house. It was supposed to feel that I guess it was supposed to be a killer plant coming from an evil planet taking over, and it was rainy in there, and everything just felt damp, and all the bushes were taking over. And the coolest part about this one was that everybody's costumes were basically like giant plant things, so it would blend in with the walls. So this one had just great scares, not to mention amazing sets and pieces, because you couldn't really tell what were the actors and what were props. So things would move and you didn't know what was happening. So a really good effect there of having some great scares. Always a good effect for me as well. Just a great scare, one where you don't really expect it. Next up, also for 28, Slaughter Cinema. Slaughter Cinema is getting a sequel this year as well. But Slaughter Cinema was supposed to be an old movie theater and you're going into all the different movies, and it would start off with kind of introducing like Revenge of the Beast Baby, and then you'd see the movie poster, and then you go into the movie. My favorite one was called Something's Kids, starts with an S, ends with an itty. Anyway, it was supposed to be that you were in like a Chuck E. Cheese and all the kids were coming out to like kill everybody, and it was an old like arcade, and it was very campy and fun and very like B movies. So it was one of those that every time that you went through it, you noticed something different, and they've used a lot of the things from that one in this past summer's tribute store. In the video store, a lot of the videos that were on the shelf were actually videos featured in the Slaughter Cinema. So that was fun to keep in the lore of Universal and Halloween Horror Nights. My last one for 28, Trick or Treat. Now this one got its own house based on the movie. The year prior for 27 had a street, so it was really fun seeing this one come to life as a full-fledged house. The street was fantastic, and watching all the different special effects, going through the actual house and seeing Sam at the top of the stairs, and then all of a sudden it was a visual effect where you'd see him at the top of the stairs, but then all of a sudden he'd disappear, and then the actor would pop out at the bottom of the stairs with his giant lollipop ready to kill. It was a very fun house, and that was my last one for 28, I promise. We'll move on to Halloween Horror Nights 29 with Graveyard Games. Graveyard Games had a really fun theme. A lot of times the storylines get a little lost and are hard to follow. This one, they did a video outside that was projected on the wall that helped you kind of realize what was happening and really made you kind of go into the storyline. So the whole theme were that there was these kids that were going into the graveyard and were vandalizing it. And then the ghosts were coming out and getting revenge on these kids. So you walked into a giant graveyard and you would go through all the different sets. And I remember they had just massive sets. They had like an actor that popped out of one part, all these different cool effects. It just makes for a good house. Beautiful sets, memorable things to look at, good storyline, and then also great scares. Made that one a really good one. Also for 29, Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. It was fun going through a Yeti house. This one was more of a winter one with a giant Yeti. So it was campy, which will be a fun play on words when you realize what the next one is for another Yeti one coming up. But this one was first time seeing the Yeti, and giant attack scenes, and also a giant Yeti popping out is terrifying and a lot of fun. Halloween Horror Nights 30, we got Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. This was one of the ones in a tent, and this one had giant sets, and it was supposed to be an abandoned theater that was collapsing, and a lot of the things came alive. So you would actually go through the full sets of the different parts of a theater. So you went through the backstage area, you went through the different costumes, you went through the actual theater, and they built a giant theater that looked like it was collapsing. The sets were amazing. The costumes were amazing. The storyline was great. It was just a really big house, and it felt gigantic when you realize you're just in a tent, but it really felt like you were going through all the different scenes of this puppet theater. They actually had puppets inside. It was a very fun house. Also that year, the Best Smelling House Award, I would say, Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin. This house was so good that it actually spawned an icon coming up. So this is when we first got introduced to the Pumpkin Lord, who became the icon for the following year. It was just such a great one to get to see the Pumpkin King come alive, and you got to go into this house where basically the pumpkin was taking over, and it smelled like pumpkin. You'd go through the whole house. They had a really fun effect where it looked like a trellis, but it was actually like more like rubber material. So you saw the trellis, you saw the actor behind it, but then all of a sudden they were able to pull it across and reach out, which was neat. And that's always a fun effect when you see something and you don't realize that it's something different. I remember they had the Freddy vs. Jason one years ago, and you saw Freddy Krueger and he's calling to you to come to him, and then all of a sudden he pops out, not realizing that he's facing a mirror and you're seeing his reflection. So he's actually like lined up right next to you. So whenever they do those fun ones is always a good one. The Puppet Theater, I remember they did one that looked like a mirror, and they built two sets, one on the outside, one on the inside, that mirrored each other. So you thought it was a mirror, but then somebody would jump through to scare you. So always fun when they do those special effects. And this one really played on the whole smell, so really played on a lot of different senses. Speaking of playing on your senses, Halloween Horror Nights featured a new one called Bugs Eaten Alive. And this one scared a lot of people just because they have such a fear of bugs, plus it played on the whole of things crawling all over you. The whole theme with this one was you're at more of a World's Fair and you're learning about this new product, and you start off in the showroom where it's very like 1950s, and they're showing you this new thing that you put on your wall that will kill the bugs. However, it goes wrong and all the smoke comes out of the machine, and it actually enhances the bugs and makes them multiply and makes them gigantic and makes them kill you. And each room you go through is a different showroom at this World Fair Expo. However, the bugs have now started attacking people, and they use different effects where it feels like they're like crawling on you. They're all over the place, like they're running around. You hear them. It's a very fun house. It's campy, but also creepy at the same time. It really hit a lot of that. And this was definitely one of those houses that year that either you loved it, like me, or you hated it. I loved it. Another one that year that was fantastic was Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake. Now, they've done Dead Man's Pier before. This one, Winter's Wake, was beautiful. And I think this is everybody's favorite that year. When you talk to anybody from that's been to Halloween Horror Nights the past few years, they go, "Did you see the one with the boat, with the girl playing the violin?" And this one, you go into an old fishing village in the winter, and all these under the sea guys that are dead are alive. However, you go into one scene, and there's a giant boat, and it looks like it's like nighttime, kind of snowing, and then there's this ghost playing the violin, and it's played by an actor up top. Then every once in a while, they like put down the violin, and they just start shrieking, and it's eerie, but it's cool, and it's pretty, and you go, and it's in a sound stage. It's what they do best. It felt like one of those Halloween Horror Nights houses where you go, yep, that's why I come here. That's what we are here for. This was amazing. That goes down as definitely one of the best houses. Now for Halloween Horror Nights 32, the most recent one, I would pick two houses from there that would make this list. It would be a sequel to Yeti Campground Kills. Now, Yeti Campground Kills, sequel house, which is always fun. However, this is a Yeti going around the campgrounds. So it was fun. It was campy. It was supposed to be very a hillbilly kind of storyline with the Yeti attacking people, somebody coming out with a frying pan. It was just a fun house, but also a terrifying house. Fun sets, just a really, really good house. Last up on the list from last year would be Dueling Dragons, Choose Thy Fate. This was one that I feel that they made basically for the fans. This was based on Dueling Dragons from Islands of Adventure, a now defunct roller coaster. And it was fun because it was going into the old queue from the ride. So I knew I had people that came from out of town that go, I didn't get it. And I'm like, well, if you didn't ride the ride, you probably don't know. But it was fun because it really did a lot of callbacks to the old ride. And the coolest part of it was Choose Thy Fate. So at the end of it, you had to go to the left or to the right, to fire or ice. And there were different scenes of either Merlin living or Merlin getting killed. I want to say I've done this one 4 times last year, and almost every time I chose, Merlin kept getting killed. So, except for once. So I never chose a good fate. But it was just a fun house. And I think that's another element that makes it unique. Something that's different each time. Something that's unique. So as you can see, there are a lot of great houses each year, and then this year even more, which I will be featuring a list of my rundown of ranking the 10 haunted houses from Halloween Horror Nights 33 very soon. But thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the fog.
Thanks for taking a ride with Average Joe Orlando.
You made it! I knew you would.
Is everyone okay? Hope you still want to open an account.
Say cheese! See you later!
Thanks, everybody. You were brilliant.
At this time, gather up your personal belongings and take your small grubs by their grubby little hands as you exit. Thank you.